back to another edition of the Unofficial Guide Disney Dish podcast with Jim Hill. It's Len Testa, your host. And today, Jim and I have a treat for you. We are recording live from Serenity Bay, the adult beach on Disney's Castaway Cay. And I gotta tell you, it was one of the best locations, Jim, we have ever recorded.
Dear Lord.
We're at the far end of the adult beach. The water, it's about 85 degrees outside, maybe 84. The water is crystal clear. The nearest people are probably 100 yards from us. We can see all the way down to the ocean. There's islands in the distance. It's just beautiful where we're at. So, Jim, thanks for being here with us.
Oh, God. Thank you. This has been a treat. I mean, just to get here. And I guess what's so ironic is we are here at this so peaceful, so, mellow surrounding. Mm-hmm. And this only exists because Michael Eisner was so insanely competitive.
That's absolutely fine.
But it's just, to get to how Disney got into the cruise business, they never really meant to be in this business.
Really?
Well, no, it was one of these things where Premier Cruise Line, which had, everybody else had thought of cruising as kind of an older thing. Mm-hmm. And Premier bought a bunch of boats and decided, okay, the niche they go after is families. So they were the big red boat. And the whole notion of, well, if we're going to do family stuff, why don't we try to bundle, a couple of days in the Caribbean with a couple of days at Walt Disney World. And Disney, and this is before Eisner walks in the door, this is 83 or thereabouts, frankly, they're in a bad financial position because of all of the spending on Epcot, and they're having to spend their own money to build Tokyo because they've blown through that budget. So it's like, this comes through the door and it's like, absolutely sure. You want to license the rights of the official cruise line of Walt Disney World, go right ahead. So, but now 83 becomes 84, Ron Miller's out, Michael Eisner is in, and, just like Michael did with everything, it's like, okay, excuse me, what is that thing up the road there, Busch Gardens? It's like, people are going there, no, we need our own zoo. So, Animal Kingdom. And what is this Church Street Station thing, where they go to at night? No, we need one of our own, so we go to Pleasure Island. And, over time, Michael eventually turned his eyes on Premier. And it was just one of these things where it's like, let me get this straight. We have all these people who then get on a bus, go over to Port Canaveral, and get on a cruise line. We don't get any of that.
We don't get any of the onboard spending of that?
It's like, come on. So, 9 years in, there was an announcement that Premier and Disney were going to separate. And
9 years in, so this is what the...
This would have been, I want to say 92 or thereabouts. 92, okay. And Disney then, Premier turns around and is like, okay, well, it's not, they still have the right to sell vacation packages. They're just not the official cruise line. And they figure that, one of the perks was they did have the Disney characters on their boats.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
that was probably big back then.
It was. And, but they turned around and like, well, people aren't going to know, so let's get Bugs Bunny. And it's like, by the year 2000, they were out of the business.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Once Disney came online with its own cruise line, Premier just never recovered. They limped along for the next couple of years, but it just never went where it was supposed to go.
Wow. So when Disney signed its deal with Premier, so from like the early to mid 80s till like 92,
yep.
Were there any Disney executives doing anything in the cruise business, or was it all run by Premier?
It was all Premier. Though not to say that Disney didn't look at doing stuff with boats, but oh God, there's this amazing story about Jim Cora, the guy's in charge of international at Disney, and he's at dinner one night, and he's sitting next to a rear admiral from the American Navy, and the guy leans over, and it's like, we got some extra aircraft carriers.
You guys should do something.
Yeah, if you want to actually, wouldn't it be cool if you built a theme park that you could float around the world? And the guy's joking, and just ha 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 ha. And Cora's like, And Monday he goes into work.
Hand me a napkin, son.
Yeah.
I must make some sketches.
But Monday goes into work and begins asking around at Imagineering, is there anybody who knows anything about boat building? And sure enough, there's an Imagineer who's been with the company for 11 years and, has all sorts of naval history. And he and Cora put together this plan of they're going to find a super tanker.
A super tanker?
A super tanker.
Okay.
And then basically this is the SS Disney. And on 4 separate floors of this thing, the top floor, for example, if you know the standard supertanker setup, where the bridge is to the back of the ship.
Yep.
That was going to be Small World.
Really?
But the thing is that where the captain looked out was going to be like up in the Eiffel Tower. All right, and below on the deck there.
So it's a boat ride on a boat.
Well, that was actually that's interesting you bring it up, because I was talking with the guy about this, and it's like, well, no, we couldn't do water and water. So it was going to be, they were going to change Small World to an Omni mover, but they were going to have this, and what's interesting is it sort of colors where, based on the rides that are on this thing, exactly when the history of the company is. They've got the Indiana Jones Jeep ride inside of this thing. They've got an Aladdin ride through. They've got, it's teacups, it's the whole schmear, and the whole notion was that this thing would travel around the globe and go to all the places that Disney couldn't go to. Yeah, and it's just the whole notion of, but go there for a 3-month run. They'd have a crew of about 500 permanent people that were on this thing. They'd then hire 1,500 to 2,000 locals that would go through about 2 weeks of training. It was designed that it would basically do 2, I want to say, 8-hour days, maybe 6-hour days, depending on the port. But 10,000 people allowed on the boat at one time.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
It is a lot of people, but
you're
yeah, but that's it exactly. And you've got 15 attractions on board, and
it's more than DCA opened with.
This is the thing, and this got very, very, very far along in the development phase. In fact, seriously, folks, if you Google SS Disney, there's an article about this that'll come up on the Disney and More website that actually includes the white foam model with the exploded view, so you can go down all 4 decks and see all of this stuff.
Wow.
The guy who worked on it was very proud, and he ultimately very frustrated, because what happened was that it finally got to... there was a very powerful wing of the Walt Disney Company that Iger basically shut down when he came on board. It was the Business Development Unit. Inside the house, it was called the Business Prevention Unit, because they said no to many things. And both Wells and Eisner just loved this idea. And it's like, oh my God, we can go to all these places where it makes no sense to build a Disney theme park, but to have it just there for 3 months as this thing, you don't want to make money hand over fist.
Yeah, you can go to Seattle, you can go to all the port cities, yeah.
That's it exactly. And in the end, it was like, no, it makes more sense for us to go into the traditional cruise market.
Okay, which is not technically a bad idea. Okay.
No.
In hindsight, right? But I get how when the decision comes down and whatever, that's like, okay.
But at the same time, there, it seems like a no-brainer, and now as successful as it was. But at the same time, when it was, when they were trying to decide, it's like, okay, so if we're going into the cruise line business, what does the Disney Cruise Line look like? And Joe Lancestrose is shared a couple of early iterations where, for example, there was one version where they had giant mouse ears on the funnels, and there was one where the notion of, well, why go to a far-off Caribbean island when we can make it a floating Caribbean island? So it's covered with palm trees, and all these iterations.
You mean like make one of a ship?
Yes, the notion is that you came onto the ship and it's a floating island.
Got it.
But in the end, Eisner's like, no, it's cruising. It's got to be romantic. It's got to be, the sort of thing that elegant, and and so he ever would walk up to the edge of, but not say. You mean like the Titanic?
the great steamships of yore.
Yeah,
not mentioning any names.
Just like the Andrea Doria.
You know, like the Lucid.
And the other thing, frankly, is
no sea story ever ends well. Have you noticed that? There's nothing like, we got on the boat in Southampton and we arrived in New York 2 weeks later. Everything was lovely.
There you go.
That's just not a good seafaring story.
No, it's not. It's not. And that coupled with the fact that, of course, Disney, doing its due diligence, went out and looked at all the other cruise lines that are out there, and it's like, the phrase they came back with is like, God, they're all floating milk cartons. These just big boxy things, white out wandering the ocean. It's just, we don't want that. And so, we want the lines of the 30s. We want that sense of travel. And so it's like, okay, are we going to do this? It's like, okay, we're going to do this. And they began looking around.
What year is this?
This is 94. They make the big announcement, and they sign with an Italian shipyard, which I think we should probably leave the name of the Italian shipyard out, because frankly, you can find this out by yourself, folks, but this is where the story gets kind of interesting, because they were the ones who built all of the big boats for all of the cruise lines, and as Disney was entering the field, a lot of other people were ramping up, and Royal Caribbean and the New Amsterdam folks and lots of people were getting into the cruise business in a big way. And suddenly this shipyard had orders for 9 giant ships, including the 2 Disney ships.
What's typical for a shipyard? Like 2?
Oh God, you're lucky because again, these things take 18 months to build.
Yeah, and they take a lot of steel. I mean, actually, people wait for dips in the steel market to commission the ships.
Absolutely. When you're working the financials for something like that. I mean, when Disney started out, in fact, we were talking about this the other day because it's fascinating. There's one number that they talk about when they started working on this. The first, when they commissioned the Magic and the Wonder, they were $250 million apiece.
Okay.
All right, so for $500 million, they got 2 ships. By the time these boats made it out into the water, the number Disney was comfortable with talking about was 7.
Wow. 7 total. So
yeah.
So from 250 to 350 each.
Yeah. And
$100 million.
A lot of that simply was because, the lovely Italian gentlemen who were building the ship were using the methods that they'd always used to build ships. In fact, so Disney would go over and it's like, so can I see your spreadsheet as to where the project is completion-wise? And it's like, spreadsheet. What spreadsheet? What spreadsheet? What is this spreadsheet that you use?
What is the Italian equivalent of graph paper on a computer?
And that coupled with, it's like, we're kind of under the gun here. We've announced that, one we're launching, and it's like, well, we don't work holidays.
We've been building ships for 2,000 years.
Yeah, so it'll
get done.
It'll get done. And what ended up happening is that Disney wound up having to cancel the first 15 sailings of the Magic.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, and after, and you got to...
So 15 is what the average is, like 4 or 5 days. So wow. So they were 2.5, 3 months late.
Yeah, and that coupled with...
That's not a good start.
What ended up biting them really in the butt was that they had made a big deal the summer before. I mean, this is, I think, the first sailing's in 98. 97, they actually announced that you can enter a lottery to be on the first cruise.
Oh, wow.
And people had to put down a $200 deposit to enter the lottery. And, and great fanfare. It's like, oh, we have, you've won, and these are your dates. And then have to call back like 6 weeks later.
Funny story.
Yeah.
You know how the Italians are, right? In Italy.
And they were doing things like, if you can change your sailing, we'll give you a 20% discount. And, but yeah, it again, wasn't an easy process to get into this market. But at the same time, and again, it's kind of ironic because when you think about the way people talked about how Disneyland was going to fail, or the first feature-length cartoon was going to fail, and so on and so forth, the people who were watching Disney get into this business and build kid-friendly boats, it's like, oh my God, you're insane. Mm-hmm. The notion of, you're going to make the rooms deliberately 25% wider. Well, there goes your margin. I mean, just, they're supposed to be small, little, tight rooms, or one of the ideas that really differentiates Disney from the rest of the cruise business, the rotational dining. How many
that was their invention, yeah.
Yeah, how many dining rooms are you going to make? And it's like no, that's cabin space. And everyone just sort of stood outside, and it's like, this makes no sense. And to carve out so much space in the middle of the boat for a live theater show,
right.
When
they both a movie theater and a live theater, on every ship.
Yeah, and I won't say that it was immediately a hit out of the box. There were a couple of hurricanes.
Yeah.
Not to mention a notrovirus thing where.
Oh yeah, the Norwalk virus.
Oh God, yeah. They went out in '98 and they had one cruise where 150 people got sick, mostly crew, and so they brought it in and did a quick cleaning and sent it out, and then 250 people got sick, and they had to pull it. They around the holidays they had to shut the ship down, and here's poor Jay Rizzullo out there like, we're going to clean the boat, it's going to be fine, but again, another thing of calling thousands of people and saying, your plan for a holiday vacation isn't going to happen this year. But yeah, they eventually. In fact, what was funny about that is immediately after that, 10 days after they've cleaned the boat, who gets on the boat but former President Bush? And we're not talking W, we're talking his dad.
Okay.
Along with the governor of Florida and their families. Oh. And it's one of these things where it's like, okay, who called in what favor to the effect of, our boat is safe, nobody's getting sick? Even W's two daughters went down and did the trip with them.
Jenna and
yep. And the Secret Service was just sort of like, they'll interact with the general cruise members over our dead bodies, But yeah, it was an interesting couple of years, and suddenly Disney has this boat that has 90% occupancy.
So what itineraries are they choosing at this point? Is it just strictly Caribbean?
Well, we were talking about this earlier, because obviously with the two new boats and putting the Dream and the Fantasy on the runs of various lengths around the Caribbean, they took what they now refer to as the classic boats. And, one of them was originally stationed in Los Angeles doing cruises to nowhere. Yeah. That didn't quite work out. And, in fact, you did the one out of Galveston, didn't you?
I did Galveston, 7-day Western Caribbean on the Magic. Mm-hmm. And Galveston hadn't worked out as a port. So originally they were just going out of Port Canaveral, right?
Yep.
So what made them decide to do the other ports? Was it just to test demand?
Well, Iger likes to think of these boats as ambassadors, and the notion is you move them to places where we aren't yet. And in fact, what's interesting when you talk with Iger about the cruise line is it's like, look, we're not a company that has a cruise line. We're an entertainment company that cruises. That's the thing of, we're constantly working to make sure that you're entertained within an inch of your life. And in fact, we were just talking about this the other night, that I think what fascinates me about the cruise line is when you get right down to it, when you get down to the level of detail, the attentiveness, the quality of the experience. This is the Walt Disney Company we used to find at the theme parks before they got so big.
Everything is taken care of all the time. Yeah, so the staff to guest ratio on the cruise line is
it's insane.
One staff for every 3 guests.
Yeah, for example, on the on the Dream, they get full boat, the cruise line right now has 3,600 people on it. They're at full load, it's 4,000, but there are 1,500 crew members.
Yep.
And so, when you work the math there, it's one for every 3 point something, right?
Yeah, two and change, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's one of these things where sometimes it can get a little overwhelming. We were at dinner last night at the Royal Palace, and it was like every 3 seconds someone was coming by the table and introducing themselves, and
Ivan and Craig and
it was like, okay, thank you,
and you do what? Have you met your stateroom attendant yet?
Oh yes, he's Mr. Jim. So like,
I think I've seen my stateroom attendant more than I've seen my mother. But they're great. I mean,
No.
they work like dogs.
They
all
do.
of them.
They do.
I think they average like 16-hour days. It's crazy.
No. But again, if you want to feel pampered, if you want to feel cared for, a cruise line is the way to go.
So Disney comes out, right, and immediately, what were the rates? Like I'm sure, like now their rates are anywhere from 25 to 100% more than like Royal Caribbean for the same cruise. So they're definitely charging a premium on a lot of things.
They are.
The Mediterranean cruises not so much, but the Caribbean, the Alaska cruises, all those basic cruises, Disney's charging a premium for those. Did they originally start that way? Or was that
they were. The numbers I've seen suggest they were anywhere from a fifth more expensive to, and it was interesting to watch them creep up. Hey,
people still on the boat, 5%.
Yeah.
Hey, people still on the boat.
Yep.
5%.
Yeah. But it's but at the same time, it's frustrating for Disney because it's like they will do things like the LA cruise.
Yeah.
And what they discovered is that when you go to a place like LA, and face it, there's a lot of people cruising on this boat that are piling on a Walt Disney World vacation.
Oh yeah, virtually everyone we've talked to, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's an easy add-on, or it's an easy, hey, you've done Disney World before, why don't you do this instead? Where in LA, the notion of, well, why don't you bundle a cruise with a visit to the Disneyland resort, that's just not happening the way they'd hoped.
No.
It's kind of a, face it, Disneyland, and I know this is going to upset a lot of people, but let's be honest here, Disneyland is the world's most famous regional theme park. When you're getting 70% of your guests from less than 100 miles away, and it's 30% that are flying in, it's hard to then turn to that 30% and go, hey, you want to go on a cruise? But they believe that give them 5 to 10 years and, give them the opportunity to do the third gate, and then it
becomes a destination.
It becomes the destination. But it's third gate, water park, another hotel. I mean, there's, you're $2 billion in the ground before you can then turn around and say, hey, I knew you want to go on a cruise.
Yeah.
And
the ships aren't getting any cheaper now.
No, and in fact, we were just talking about that. And I remember we talked $250 to $350 for the Magic and the Wonder. By the time it came time to build the the Dream and the Fantasy, well, first of all, it's like, thank you, nice Italian shipbuilders, but we won't be coming back. They found a German firm, Meyer. Oh, I'm blanking. Meyer Werft.
Yeah.
Who, and what was interesting in just the 10 years or so since they've been doing the new ships, the construction technique had changed. They, for example, with what they did with the two new ships was almost like Legos. I mean, they broke the ship down into 18 different blocks, and then it would build each of the blocks and then, put them together.
Really?
Yeah.
Whereas the Italians were like, we're laying the keel, we're building up the...
Yeah, it was, very, very traditional, and that, to be honest, that also ran over, one of the reasons they ran over. I mean, that coupled with the fact that, in the Italians' case, it was just like, look, there's a ship ahead of you, and we're behind schedule, so we're going to pull our people off of the Disney boat and put them on that one. It's like, what? So not happy with that. But the German, actually, what's fascinating about that is that these two cruise liners were built indoors.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, giant, tremendously huge shipbuilding facility. In fact, they assembled all the steel, and when the keel and when it was watertight, they flooded the building and floated the thing out of the thing.
Wow, that's cool.
Oh, it's huge. And the nice thing is, because it took 18 months to build this thing, they kept it indoors and avoided 2 German winters. But the funny thing is that for the sea trial, they got into, they were out sort of testing everything, and they got a freak winter snowstorm, and Joe has these great pictures of the deck of the ship covered with ice and snow. And
really, like it's something out of what's the crab show on?
Oh yeah, the
Deadliest Catch,
Deadliest
yeah.
Catch. And it's like, and it was just, and that was the thing of just trying to make your way across this thing that doesn't have all of its safety rails in, and doesn't have, because again, it's a sea trial. We were going to go back and do the finish work, and it's like, the USS Death Trap. So nice to be out on the sea, and slide into the bay. But
So when so Disney builds their first two ships, right? And the ships are registered in Panama?
I want to say Bahamas, and
Why aren't they registered in the United States?
well, there's a lot.
I mean, there are no cruise ships that are registered in the United States. Very
No. It just that between the financial advantages and the maritime customs. Speaking of which, though, that that's another thing that made these kind of makes these ships unique is the color scheme. Everybody knows about the Mickey. How they use Mickey's colors to do the boat.
Yep.
And what they ended up doing, however, was that you have to go head to head. You can't just paint your boat any color. You actually have to go to U.S. Coastal, Coast Guard.
Yeah.
And there are maritime regulations. Like, for example, there's a reason they no longer paint boats black, because when you're driving your boat at night and another boat can't see you and drives inside of you, it's like, again, Andrea Dory. Yep. So that's
why Disney, I understand, had to get special permission to color their lifeboats. Or they're yellow, right?
6 months of dealing with the Coast Guard before.
Normally they're orange, so you can for visibility.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, but 6 months Disney paid for the tests, and the Coast Guard, would throw a lifeboat out in
the Atlantic.
Go find it. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, yellow works. So, but again, and the weird thing of it is that for Disney, it's not Mickey yellow. It's, I believe it's called Yellow 99. Mm-hmm. And in fact, what I love is the story about how they arrived at the black, because John Hench, who was the king of color for Disney at that point, and really wanted the Mickey color, but they couldn't get a black that worked. And so, but they were just starting to experiment with black blues to see whether or not that would work. And one day, a secretary at Imagineering walks in. Her name is Pam. Mm-hmm. And, they just into the meeting, delivering some memos, walks out, and John's like, stop. And it's like, okay, what? Turn around. Pam is wearing a blue, dark blue, verging on black pantsuit. And John's like, I need your pants.
HR comes bursting into the room and says, it's for research.
And seriously, John gets the pants, gets a color wheel, and it's like, that's it. And so that's actually, so when you go, if when they're ordering up to repaint the boat, it's in honor of her. It's Pam Blue.
Is it really?
Yes. So.
Oh. Pam's Pants Blue.
Pants Blue.
That would have been Pam Blue. That's nice.
So, but yeah, but that again, this is Disney. There's a level of detail on these boats. It just gets insane. Whether it's, for example, you and I the other night had a wonderful drink up in Meridian.
Yeah, the Martini Bar.
But the weird thing is that when you get in that room and start talking with those guys, it's like, well, first of all, this isn't a Martini Bar. This is where we store the luggage. And in fact, if you look around at all the chairs and such in that room, they have the strap down the middle of them. So this is where, old-time suitcases had straps. Yep. And again, because this is an old-time room, they bought these wonderful leather chairs that they went out and then distressed because it had to be old-time.
It's been on the ship for ages.
Yeah.
They do a really good job with the detail on those things.
I don't know, absolutely. But at the same time, when you look at things like what they did... because, again, it's a boat, and there are safety regulations. Like, you can't cook on this boat with gas. It's all electric.
Is it really?
Yep. And, again, because, you have all these concerns about fire at sea, so often what you think is wood. For example, when you go into Remy and those wonderful
French restaurant, right?
Beautiful, curving, stylized, beams there, it's like, not wood. Painted to look like wood.
But not wood.
But not wood. I don't know. It's, I guess, just to sort of look ahead here. Again, you have 4 ships that are going out with 90% occupancy, mm-hmm. And you ask Disney about the future, and they have. But the reality is they have an open contract with the Germans for 2 more boats.
With the Germans?
With the Germans.
Not with the Italians?
No. No. You know, the interesting thing is that when it comes to design, you know, for example, everything in Paolo's that is supposed to be Italian was actually built by Italians. That, you know, the rugs, the actual poles to open the where the wine is kept in Paolo, built in Italy.
Okay.
So, but it's like
the Germans built the ships.
Yeah, it's like
you're really good at art.
That's right. You can do the decorations. Let them build the ships. But even the Germans, you know, that there was this unfortunate episode where the Germans went home for the weekend and somebody left a valve open, and they came back on a Monday and the bottom deck of the ship had been flooded.
Oopsie doodle.
Yeah, so it's like.
That make sense too.
But you know, overall they're very, very happy with them, and they'll continue on when they decide to continue on. But that's, you know, that, and then that opens a whole another kettle of fish, because it's like right now, I mean, the number of boats that actually come here to Castaway Cay, you know,
4.
Yep.
3 sometimes.
And if you in fact decide that you're going to add 2 more ships.
We talked about this. Yeah, just from a rotation perspective, there could be conflicts.
Yep. So.
Yeah, that'd be terrible.
But.
All right. Well, let's wrap up this episode. With the next episode, we'll talk about the ships in detail.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do that. For Jim, this is Len. You've been listening to the Unofficial Guide Disney Dish podcast with Jim Hill. We're broadcasting from Castaway Cay. We'll do one more episode from that. You guys can hear the water in the background. For Jim, this is Len. Thanks for listening. Please rate us on iTunes and let us know what else you'd like to hear next. And we'll see you on the next show.